She looked at me with a mix of fear and longing and whispered, "You're tempting me." I smiled, steady and unshaken, and told her, "That's the plan." From that moment, nothing between us could ever be the same. It started on an ordinary evening, or at least it should have been. I had gone over to my friend Daniel's house, expecting nothing more than a night of video games and jokes that only made sense between the two of us. But the moment his mother stepped into the living room, something in the air shifted. She wasn't trying to draw attention to herself. In fact, she looked casual, her hair loosely tied back, a few strands escaping to frame her face. She wore a soft blouse tucked into fitted jeans, nothing extravagant, and yet the simplicity only made her seem more graceful. There was a kind of quiet poise in the way she moved, as though she carried the weight of experience with ease. "Would you boys like some tea?" she asked, her voice warm, smooth, carrying that maternal gentleness that instantly put people at ease. But for me, it did something else. It lingered. When she handed me the cup, our fingers brushed, just for a second. The porcelain was warm, but her skin was warmer, and in that tiny exchange something unspoken passed between us. My chest tightened as though the touch carried a meaning I shouldn't admit to myself. I covered it with a polite smile, nodding my thanks, but inside, I was suddenly restless. Daniel didn't notice. He was already focused on setting up the game console, half listening as his mom reminded him to keep the volume down. But I noticed everything, the faint floral scent of her perfume, the way her eyes rested on me for a beat too long before she turned away. I tried to shake it off. She was just being kind. She was my friend's mother. That was all. And yet, when she laughed softly at something Daniel said, I found myself studying the way her lips curved, the way her shoulders lifted ever so slightly as if she was holding part of herself back. Later, when she passed by the couch to set down a plate of snacks, the subtle brush of her sleeve against my arm sent another quiet jolt through me. It wasn't deliberate, it couldn't have been, but it was enough to make me wonder if she felt it too. I told myself it was nothing. That I was imagining things. But as she left the room, her presence lingered, more vivid than the flicker of the television screen or the noise of the game loading up. Something had begun, quietly, without words, and I already knew I wouldn't forget the way her fingers had touched mine. The next few times I visited Daniel's house, I told myself to be careful, to think of her only as his mom and nothing more. But it became impossible to ignore the subtle currents that seemed to flow whenever she was near. She had a way of asking questions that felt different from the usual polite chatter adults made with younger people. She didn't just ask what I was studying, she asked why. She leaned forward slightly when I spoke, her eyes holding mine with a focus that made me feel both seen and disarmed. I found myself speaking more honestly than I intended, saying things I normally kept to myself. And the way she listened, not distracted, not impatient, left me with a warmth I couldn't quite shake. One evening, Daniel had run upstairs to grab something, leaving the two of us alone in the living room. The television hummed quietly, casting a faint glow across the room, but my attention was fixed on her. She sat beside me on the couch, not too close, but close enough that I could catch the delicate fragrance of her perfume, a mix of something floral and something deeper, more grounded. She asked if I enjoyed spending time at their home, and when I answered yes, her smile lingered, almost shy. It was strange, she was a woman who carried herself with confidence, yet in that moment, there was a softness to her, a vulnerability she didn't try to hide. I noticed details I shouldn't have, the faint shimmer of the ring on her hand as she smoothed a wrinkle in her blouse, the way her laugh caught just slightly in her throat when I said something teasing. These little things stayed with me, louder than the noise of Daniel returning and plopping down on the other side of me. Later, as we all watched a movie, she leaned closer to reach for the remote on the coffee table. Her shoulder brushed mine, light, unintentional, but it set my skin on fire. She didn't pull back quickly, instead, she hesitated for just a fraction of a second. Long enough to make me wonder if the warmth that ran through me had reached her too. I didn't dare say anything. Daniel sat right there, oblivious. But inside, the truth was undeniable. With every lingering glance, every brush of her sleeve, the line between polite kindness and quiet temptation blurred a little more. And though we never spoke of it, we both knew something had already begun to stir between us. It happened late one evening, in the quiet after laughter. Daniel had gone upstairs, mumbling something about being tired, leaving me alone in the living room. For a while, I sat there, staring absently at the paused screen. But the faint clatter of dishes drew me toward the kitchen. She was there, sleeves rolled slightly above her elbows, standing at the sink. Warm water ran over her hands, catching the light, while steam curled lazily into the air. She didn't hear me at first, so I watched her for a second longer than I should have, the calm concentration in her expression, the gentle rhythm of her movements. She looked both ordinary and extraordinary, like beauty had chosen to hide in the details. I cleared my throat softly. She turned, surprised but smiling. "You don't need to be in here," she said, her voice carrying that playful firmness mothers often have. "Let me help," I offered. I didn't wait for permission, I stepped beside her, grabbing a towel. She didn't argue, just slid one dish toward me, her eyes flicking up for the briefest moment before returning to the sink. Our hands brushed as we worked. At first it was accidental, my fingers grazing hers as I took a glass she had rinsed. But when it happened again, lingering a little longer, it didn't feel like coincidence. Her skin was warm, slick with water, and yet that warmth shot straight into me, more alive than anything I'd felt in weeks. She let out the faintest laugh, soft and almost nervous. "You're going to make a mess," she teased, though her voice lacked its usual steadiness. I looked at her then, really looked, at the curve of her mouth, the slight flush in her cheeks, the way her eyes avoided mine as though looking directly at me would reveal too much. For a second, I thought she might pull away, but she didn't. She stayed there, her hand resting against mine in the warm water, neither of us moving. The hum of the refrigerator filled the silence, the only sound besides the water still running. And yet, it felt like the whole house was listening, waiting. My chest tightened with a mix of nerves and certainty. Whatever this was, it wasn't just me imagining it. Finally, she drew her hand back, wiping it quickly on a towel. "Thank you," she whispered, though her tone carried more weight than gratitude. In that small, ordinary kitchen, without a single word of confession, we had already said too much. The air outside was cooler than I expected. I stepped onto the porch for some fresh air, hoping it would quiet the storm inside me. The stars stretched wide across the night sky, and the cicadas hummed their endless song. I leaned against the railing, letting the wood press into my palms, trying to steady myself. Then I heard the door creak open. She stepped out, pulling her cardigan tighter around her shoulders. For a moment, she didn't say anything, just stood beside me, her presence filling the night more than the stars ever could. "It's quieter out here," she said softly. "Yeah," I replied. "Feels like the world slows down a little." She gave a faint smile, eyes lifting to the sky before shifting to me. There was something different in her gaze tonight, softer, yet heavier, like she was carrying a thought she couldn't quite put down. We stood in silence for a while, listening to the night. Then she sighed, crossing her arms as though bracing herself. "You know, you make things complicated," she murmured. I turned toward her, my heart pounding. "Complicated how?" Her eyes lingered on mine, unflinching yet vulnerable. "You notice me. More than you should. More than anyone has in a long time." Her words settled between us like a fragile secret. I didn't rush to fill the silence. Instead, I let the weight of them rest inside me before answering. "I don't notice you because I should or shouldn't," I said quietly. "I notice you because I can't not." She looked away, her arms tightening across her chest. But when my hand reached out, gently brushing against hers at her side, she didn't pull away. Her skin was cool from the night air, and yet the contact burned into me, a tether I didn't want to release. Her breath caught, barely audible, but enough to tell me she felt it too. "This isn't," this isn't right," she whispered, though the weakness in her voice betrayed her resolve. I stepped just slightly closer, careful not to cross more than she allowed. "I'm not here to do what's right or wrong," I said. "I'm here because I want to reach you." The world seemed to hold its breath. She didn't answer right away, but her hand shifted beneath mine, her fingers brushing back, tentative, almost afraid, yet not letting go. The invisible line we had been circling for days was still there, but now, for the first time, we were standing on it together. The night seemed to stretch endlessly, holding us in a space that felt far away from rules, judgment, or time. Her hand was still beneath mine, resting at the railing, neither of us moving. The air smelled faintly of cut grass and cool earth, and the silence between us was more powerful than any conversation. She finally exhaled, as if carrying the weight of something she could no longer keep inside. Her voice was low, barely above a whisper, but each word carved itself into me. "You're tempting me." The words hung there, suspended in the cool night, heavier than anything else she had said before. Her eyes didn't meet mine at first, they stayed fixed on the ground, on the shadows cast by the porch light. But I saw the way her chest rose and fell, uneven, her control slipping. For a heartbeat, I didn't know how to answer. A dozen voices in my head told me to step back, to ease her worry, to laugh it off. But that wasn't what my heart wanted. What my heart wanted was honesty. So I turned toward her fully, my voice calm but certain. "That's the plan." Her head snapped up, eyes wide, startled by the directness. For a long second, neither of us breathed. The cicadas kept singing, the night went on around us, but for me, the entire world shrank to the few inches of space between her lips and mine. Her breath caught, quick and sharp. I could see the turmoil flickering in her gaze, guilt, longing, fear, and something deeper, something she had been holding back for far too long. I didn't close the distance. I didn't need to. It was enough to let the truth live in the air between us, undeniable. Slowly, almost cautiously, she let her fingers curl against mine. It wasn't much, just the faintest squeeze, but the meaning was louder than words. Her hand trembled, yet she didn't let go. "You shouldn't say things like that," she whispered, but her voice lacked conviction. It was a plea without strength. I leaned in slightly, enough for my words to reach her like a secret. "Then stop me." But she didn't. The night was still, the stars bright above, and in that fragile pause I realized we had crossed into a place where nothing would ever feel the same again. The silence wasn't empty anymore, it was filled with everything we had finally dared to admit. We slipped back inside after a while, the porch door clicking softly behind us. The house was hushed, Daniel long since asleep, and the glow of a single lamp in the living room made everything feel warmer, closer, almost secret. She sat on the couch first, smoothing her cardigan as though trying to collect herself. I hesitated for a moment, then lowered myself beside her. The distance between us was polite, but the silence said otherwise. It hummed with the memory of her words, of mine, of the way our hands had refused to let go. For a while, neither of us spoke. She stared ahead at nothing, her hands clasped in her lap, while I studied the profile of her face in the golden light, the curve of her cheekbone, the faint crease near her lips that only appeared when she was trying not to reveal too much. Finally, she sighed. "You don't understand what you're doing to me," she murmured, her voice soft but raw. I turned toward her, my chest tight. "Then help me understand." Her eyes flicked to mine, full of something I couldn't name, part fear, part longing, part disbelief that I could look at her the way I did. She shook her head lightly, a small, helpless smile tugging at her lips. "It's been so long since anyone really saw me. Not as a mother, not as someone's responsibility. Just me." The vulnerability in her words settled into me like an anchor. I leaned forward, lowering my voice. "I don't just see you. I can't look away." Her breath caught, and for a moment I thought she might cry. Instead, she slowly leaned toward me, resting her head against my shoulder. The shift was gentle, almost cautious, but once she was there, it felt inevitable, like that was where she had belonged all along. Her weight against me was grounding, steady, real. I felt the warmth of her cheek through my shirt, the soft rhythm of her breathing as it slowed, syncing with my own. My hand rose without thought, hovering before settling lightly against her arm. Her skin was smooth, the warmth seeping through the thin fabric, and I let my thumb trace the faintest, absent-minded circle there. She didn't move away. She only sighed, as if releasing a burden she had carried too long. And in that quiet living room, with her head against my chest and her heart beating steady beside mine, I realized this wasn't temptation anymore. It was connection. It was need. It was something deeper neither of us could deny. For a long time we sat like that, her head resting on my shoulder, my hand lightly on her arm, the room wrapped in a hush so complete it felt sacred. I wanted time to stop, to leave us suspended in that moment where nothing outside could intrude. But eventually, I felt the tension return in the way she shifted slightly, as though the weight of reality was pressing back in. "I shouldn't let this happen," she whispered, her voice carrying both fear and tenderness. "People would never understand." I turned to look at her, careful not to break the closeness. "Maybe people don't need to. Maybe it's enough that we do." Her eyes lifted to mine, searching, conflicted. I could see the hesitation, years of expectation, of worry, of being careful. Yet beneath it all, there was a glow, a part of her that longed to be chosen, to be held, to be seen without apology. "You're young," she murmured, shaking her head faintly. "You should be chasing people your own age, not this." I gave a small, steady smile. "But it wasn't anyone else who made me feel this way. It was you." Her lips parted slightly, as though she wanted to argue, but no words came. Instead, her gaze softened, the resistance in her shoulders fading. Slowly, she reached up, her hand brushing against my cheek. Her palm was warm, her touch light but deliberate, as if she were memorizing the feel of me. That simple touch said more than anything we had spoken. It wasn't reckless, it wasn't rushed. It was a choice, fragile but certain. I covered her hand with mine, pressing it gently against my cheek. "You don't have to be afraid," I whispered. "Not with me." For the first time that night, she smiled fully, unguarded, radiant. It was the kind of smile that didn't just light her face, it lit the space between us. And in that moment, all the doubt seemed smaller. She leaned into me fully then, her arms circling around my shoulders, pulling me into her embrace. I wrapped my arms around her in return, holding her tight, feeling the steady rhythm of her heartbeat against my chest. It was strong, sure, alive. We didn't need to say anything more. In that embrace, everything was decided. This wasn't temptation, wasn't complication, it was something real, something neither of us could deny. And for the first time, it felt like love had finally found its way through the silence. Some stories remind us that love doesn't always follow rules, it simply finds us where we least expect it. If this slow burn romance touched your heart, don't forget to like the video, subscribe for more age gap love stories, and share your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to hear if you've ever felt that same pull of connection when you least expected it.